Welcome to Classic Mistake, the podcast that celebrates the human side of classical music. In other words, fails. I am Sara Hansanoko, the host of our very first episode, The Saras. This episode features stories from myself and the other founding member of Green Banana Flute Studios, Sara McDonald. We're both professional flutists in Calgary, Alberta, and you can find out more about us at gbflutes.com. First up, outdoor fails. So we were planning this chamber music festival in Nanton, Alberta, that one day I'd love to bring back, but that's a side note. And to advertise for what we were doing, we went, what was it? Was it like a market or a fair, like Nanton Days or something like that?
Like a hoedown.
Yeah, people were out and there was a little stage set up and we, offered to play outside to give people sort of a little taste of what we were going to do. And we had electronics. So it was for 2 flutes and electronics. So we had set it up with
flute versus flute.
Yes, we set it up with the sound system and everything was perfect. It was a beautiful day. We watched the performers before us, which were all probably like country music singers. And we set up our flutes and then out of nowhere, this just like extreme windstorm blows in.
It was a dust storm.
It was a dust storm, just like from nothing to like hurricane force winds. And we tried
but
to
the
suffer
dust,
through
I remember
it.
the dust was spraying in the eyes. And I had literally, that is the first time my gold flute had come out of the case since being overhauled. And I was like,
why did we bring our real flutes to these events anyways? And yeah, and then some of these like really nice gentlemen were trying to hold up because not only was the music blowing off, the stands were blowing off the stage, so they were trying to hold the music up. And then people were just kind of leaving because you couldn't even sit there in the crowd because you're just getting pummeled by sand.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was like maybe the worst performance of my entire life, perhaps.
It was
quite
pretty
possible.
bad. Yeah, it was really bad.
Hilariously bad.
I was out playing a wedding in Banff because, they're like, it's good money.
Yeah.
It's cash. You sit there and play a couple of tunes and you're done. But I had my stand. I've learned, first of all, just not to play for weddings outside or like ever. They just never go well.
I know.
It's never good. Anyways, I was outside, brought my stand, had to weight it down with like bricks or something. And I had clothespins for my music, but it was so very windy that the wind just blew my music across this field. And I'm running, chasing music. I played another wedding. I don't remember who, but my mom was there. So it must have been for people that are part of the family. And the wind, how sometimes the wind just like blows your sound away?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like a flute player only problem.
No one else would know, but if you're not blowing faster than the wind, then you can't create sound. So you end up blowing like so hard that normally the flute wouldn't even, but that's just how you have to do it. But I remember my mom was standing beside me with a book like by my face.
Okay.
To block the wind so that I could play.
So that you could make a sound.
Like terribly.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone was like, she's professional?
Yeah. Well, and it's really off-putting, I find. The second you're playing you're blowing in the way that you're expecting a sound to be created, and literally no sound comes out at all, and then your brain goes into panic mode because it's like, what's happening? So then you start doing other things to try and make the sound come out, which are not going to be effective at all. And
I figured out that
spirals.
if I blowed really hard, then the sound would come out, but then the wind would like die down for a second, and then
and then you're playing quadruple four
out of control, or squeaking, and
it's just a really delightful, beautiful, non-distracting music for the bride.
Oh my God, I played one wedding that was in like a thunderstorm on Nose Hill. I didn't even know these people, and we marched up to the top, and I don't know, she must have been like quite a free spirit because she was like, I'm doing this. I'm getting married in this thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And her whole family there was like 5 umbrellas, created a cocoon around me who was like playing the flute and stuff. Things we do when we're young. I mean, it's so stupid.
Yeah, desperate times.
Or just like, just say no.
Yeah.
It's time to say no.
Yes, PSA. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Don't play outdoor weddings. Next up, Sara and I talk about performing when we're sick or with some, physical ailments.
I remember playing Planets with CPO and I was really sick and my sound just went away. was like just air, articulated air coming on my flute, like in all those.
Yes.
I was just too sick to make a sound. Time I had a recital as an undergraduate, I would have diarrhea. And I had to play the whole recital knowing that I'm in this beautiful dress that I spent like $200 on, and I have serious diarrhea. Seriously serious diarrhea. And that, I mean, no one wants that to happen.
No.
That kind of malfunction. And I never like malfunctioned, but God, it's gross.
Yeah.
That's just not managing your stress very well.
Right. Nerves, unfortunately,
Yeah, exactly.
get the bowels moving.
They really do. Get them moving way too good.
Yes. My favorite performance being sick was with Yo-Yo Ma. So the orchestra hired Yo-Yo Ma to come and play. It's like a once in a lifetime. I can't imagine he'll ever come back and play with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. Maybe, never say never. But it was one of those things where I wanted to be there. And I was just, this is pre-pandemic. I was so sick. Just a horrible chest cold. It was probably like almost bronchitis. And yeah, and they even let me miss the first rehearsal because I was so sick, like I couldn't even get out of bed. But the next day I was like, I'm going and I'm playing this. And I'll never forget it. Yo-Yo Ma walks out onto stage and looks right at me and says, "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" I don't like to have that kind of attention. And I was like, "I'm fine, thank you."
You're like living the dream.
Yeah. And there's all these beautiful, it was the Dvorak cello concerto, I think, and there's all these beautiful like cello and flute, like little duets and moments together. So it was recorded live on the internet. It's out there. It's like on YouTube somewhere. You can find it, seeing me perform really sick. But yeah, in the end, I'm really glad I got the opportunity because it was like, it was enjoyable to do, and I got to like listen to this legend, and he was such a nice man and such a good player.
Did you feel like you were still able to like play the way you wanted to and have the experience that you wanted to?
I mean, no, not even close. Not even close. But nothing horrifically went wrong. I was like, okay, all the notes came out. They all sounded.
Yourself,
yeah. Maybe it wasn't my most glorious sound or intonation or anything like that. Because, I don't know, when I'm sick, I just feel like I have no control over what I'm doing on my instrument at all. But yeah, so that was my favorite one. I don't know what it is about nerves that make your nose start to run. I don't know if this happens to you. Maybe just all your bodily fluids.
My nose does not run.
Okay. Always. Just like my nose, I'd be playing the piano and there's nothing you can do. You've got both hands occupied and it just, glistening droplets of snot dropping from my nose. Like onto my hands, onto my lap. Like the flute, just having to kind of like take a second to sort of like lick it with your tongue so that it just, it's just so gross.
Just like in a daycare.
Yeah.
It's
like a snotty toddler because you can't, normally you would just stop and blow your nose, but there's nothing you can do in the middle of a performance. It just runs. So this is post-pandemic, the first time I was just getting over a cold. And so I like took, the strongest cold meds you could possibly take before this performance. And it had sort of like a chest expectorant in it. So I hadn't been having coughing attacks with whatever cold this was, but the chest expectorant just activated and brought out this chest cough. And I was so embarrassed to even cough at all because I just thought there'd be so much judgment coming my way because of the pandemic.
There would be.
So I literally got up. This was in the performance. I literally got up and left. Because I was like, okay, I have just enough time.
You left the stage?
I left the stage. I snuck off. And it was like a Christmas sort of pops show, so I wasn't the center of attention. It was dark enough that I could kind of be incognito, and I snuck off the stage and let out this huge coughing attack. And then the piece ended, and I thought I could sneak in enough time because the next piece started with a flute solo, but I did not sneak back in time, and so the entire audience witnessed me trying to walk back unnoticed, but it was just a pregnant pause of me walking back on stage, and I had just had such a bad coughing attack, and then we had to start the next piece with this extremely delicate flute solo, and I just had tears streaming down my face. Just because of the, not because I mean, I was also embarrassed, but it was mostly from the coughing attack. And I mean, I got through it, but yeah. And then the conductor came up to me after. He said, "Are you okay?" And I thought you were going to puke. I said, "No, it was just some coughing and I didn't want to do it on stage."
I'm just afraid of the judgment.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, what have we become?
Anyways.
Oh my God, that's
that.
so embarrassing. I did have a cough attack in the middle of the Chopin piano concerto, to the point where after David was like, "Are you all right?" Oh, I hate when that happens, because I was sitting there just like tears.
Yeah. Well, because you're
choking and you're
Yeah.
fighting, and I was like, "It's 100 bars to the flute solo," and I knew that I couldn't possibly play the flute solo now
Without coughing, yeah.
even if I did.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
one of those coughs where it like would start and then I would
just, like,
cough until I threw up.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yes.
but I was like, this has to get under control in the next 100 bars, because the flute solo in that one, like, starts and then it's only the flute, like, that goes into the next section. So without it, it's just like a big hole.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nobody.
You cannot really do without it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
I wish I could have left the stage.
So embarrassing. It was a Beethoven symphony with Roberto Minchuk conducting, and you know, a climax. I can't remember which symphony it was, but a climax of the
Symphony
piece.
number 9.
Oh, you remember?
I
So
do.
it was the Ninth Symphony, and there's a big, big crescendo up to a big climax with like a grand pause, which means everybody in the orchestra stops for dramatic effect for just a second before coming in on some like huge, climactic chord. Yeah, and somebody in the audience had the loudest sneeze right in that rest that I have ever heard. You remember it?
I do. I've thought about that moment so many times. Because, first of all, because Minchuk was just like pissed.
He was the look on it. If looks could kill, that man would have instantly just vaporized.
Because it just ruined
it.
But it was also so over the top, that sneeze. It was like a cartoon old lady, like,
Yeah. It was like, it eclipsed the sound of the entire orchestra.
So don't you wonder if someone did that on purpose?
If they did, they must have rehearsed it many times. I mean, that was...
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it just was ridiculous.
It was timed so well, but I mean, the entire orchestra started laughing. You could see every shoulder like going up and down, and so you could see the progression on Roberto's face where he was like furious about it, and then he looked around and saw this is all happening in like a split second, and then he looks around and sees everyone laughing, and then he kind of the corners of his lips turn up and he almost starts chuckling, and then he just like kind of accepted the situation and just brought us in as epically as he always does. And then off we did finish the symphony. But I think that was my favorite sneeze of all time.
How embarrassed would you be?
I don't know. They were pretty unabashed about it. I feel like that person probably wasn't embarrassed at all.
How disconnected are you?
Yeah.
Come on, like, if I ever did something in like a orchestra hall, like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I'm just watching the LA Phil, and I personally have done something enough to piss off the conductor and make him angry.
It's bad enough on stage to have a little thing like that. But yeah.
That person.
Yeah, that's a memorable one. Next up are some stories that are just plain embarrassing. So I was auditioning for the principal flute job for Regina. And at the time, I was like fairly fresh out of school and had done like a couple of auditions. And in my mind, like, this was my job. Like, I was gonna win this job. So I go, and in orchestra auditions, there's multiple rounds, and this was the first time I had advanced far enough that the screen came down and I got to see who was out there. And for some reason, no one had prepared me for this. I didn't expect it. There was like maybe 14 or 15 people sitting out on the panel, and I had never experienced that, and I was just... It threw me off. Like, I just thought... Like, I got really scared. So who knows what came out of my flute. Anyways, it's not an excuse. I digress. So after that round, I think there was 3 of us who had played that round. And then we're all sitting in the back room, like waiting to hear the results of that round, and chatting. It's a Canadian audition. We all kind of know each other. We're friendly. We're getting to know each other, and it's just taking a really long time. And after a while, like, we're starting to make comments like, what's taking so long, kind of thing. And I don't know why I said this, but I said to these two other flute players, like, oh, we were all just so good, they couldn't decide. And, like, seconds later, they came out and cut only me.
I do remember you telling me this.
It's like one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Like, why did I say that? So, yeah, it's good to not get too cocky at these
slap
things.
of God.
Yeah. Going to audition for a university, and for whatever reason, like, the head of the school was there. I guess maybe he was on the audition panel. And I walked in and he said, oh, you didn't want to go to the conservatory in Paris? And I was so thrown off by that question because I didn't even know about the conservatory in Paris at that time. Same thing, 17-year-old kid. I don't know anything about anything. I didn't grow up in a musical family that knows these things. And I just said, oh, it's too expensive. And he said, oh, but it's free. And then I was like, okay. I don't know what to say. As if I would have gotten into the conservatory in Paris at that time, being that naive and unprepared. But yeah. Next up, equipment fails.
I one time had a microphone almost take out my flute.
Okay.
It felt like a microphone was up on a stand. Whoever had set up that, it was for that Stampede horse gig or something.
Horse show, yeah.
Yeah, and they had set up this whole, I don't know, like a raised platform above the seats in Roundup Center, I think. And it was treacherous. The whole thing was like plywood on some scaffolding. And then I was sitting there, my flute was on its stand, and a microphone fell and just whoosh, like hit the floor, and it came within an inch of my flute, like just smashing it to bits. And I know.
How did you react?
Well, it happened. So it was one of those things where you're just looking at it and then you realize that your flute isn't smashed. So relieved, but also pissed. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Who set this up? Water in the Keys is the worst, especially I feel Calgary's dry. So it doesn't happen here very often. And then you go to any humid place and it happens all the time, and you're not checking, you're not ready, you're not prepared to even not make that mistake, because it's something that just doesn't happen here. One time I had my piccolo was like half unsealing, but it would only do it sometimes, as they do when there's like a piece of lint in the mechanism or something stupid. And I had to play this solo, like a bunch of quiet long C's in a row. Of course, it was the week that like Lorna McGee was here playing principal, and I'm playing piccolo on this little solo, and the piccolo just started extreme malfunction, like in the dress rehearsal, and it was like dropping octaves, splitting, squeaking. It sounded like it was completely incompetent. And I was like closing the keys, and I could see these big gaps that I'm like, oh my god, it just broke. And so in the concert, I just played Gwen's piccolo.
Okay.
And then it, like, whatever was in the mechanism just fell out.
Okay.
And so no one else could recreate that. So it really just looked like
you just were completely incompetent.
Just freaking couldn't play it. It was like, sorry.
It's my flute, I swear, it's my piccolo.
Yeah, well, my piccolo's broken. And then Gwen tries it. She's like, you can play mine if it will help. And it did.
This is a good reason to have good relationships with your colleagues.
Oh god, it's just embarrassing. Yeah. The time that I played Penny Whistle for Lord of the Rings. So I was supposed to play piccolo, all of those Hobbit solos or whatever, and the composer was he must have been from Ireland. He was very passionate, and I remember thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, he sounds like he really knew Irish music, and he was like not having it. This could not be done on piccolo. It needed to be done on penny whistle. So I was excused from rehearsal to drive to Long McQuaid to buy penny whistles in the appropriate keys. And the penny whistles there are maybe $8 a whistle. Like, we're not talking about high quality instruments here. Brought them back to the orchestra, started playing them in the orchestra. They sounded so bad, so quiet, so out of tune. And he was like, don't worry, we're going to work this out. And I'm like, oh my God. And even Gwen was like, I don't think you should play those. Let's just do it on pickle. I'm like, I know. It's not like I'm trying to make this work, you know?
Yeah.
So I ended up realizing that because the penny whistles were so crappy, I had to take pliers and break the mouthpieces off them. That's how I could tune them, because someone had glued it on like too far down, so the whole thing was out of tune with itself. Anyways.
That's really brilliant, actually, that you were able to figure
honestly,
that out.
it sounded so bad that there was like a solution had to be found besides just embarrassing myself really terribly. Because in rehearsal, they were so quiet that only really the people really close to me could hear that it was terrible and should not be heard. But in the next rehearsal, they mic'd them. So it had to be solved before then. But the problem was, because the penny whistles were so cheap, like sometimes for reasons unknown, certain fingerings would just cause the whistle to squeak.
Okay.
Horribly squeak. And it didn't matter how much I practiced. It's just sometimes the whistle just squeaked and sounded horrible. So luckily it didn't actually happen in any of the concerts, but it happened in the rehearsals. It happened at home, practicing all the time. It was just so stressful, the penny whistle thing. So it was like an almost, I guess.
Yeah, and almost.
It was, I mean, professionally, it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
By the time the concerts happened, everyone was like, oh, wow. You know, listen to those penny. I'm like, yeah, you don't know how much I practiced the penny whistles in 3 days. Hours, more than I ever practiced the flute. And it was like 2 8-bar solos. That's it. I actually bought $25 penny whistles in case that ever happens to me again. Because the $25 penny whistles don't squeak and they don't sound like crap.
You should tour the world with just... You should record a penny whistle album.
I did for... I recorded a little number for TikTok.
Okay, you did?
Yeah, with Rachel.
Oh, I gotta say, okay.
I don't know how to use TikTok.
Okay. Okay, getting off topic. Next up, memory fails.
When I first started playing Kiwanis on the flute, I played with... a couple of the kids who were in academy here were quite good, and myself, who was playing the Mozart Andante, and I probably forgot 80%.
Oh, God.
It was just like every single entry missed it.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember the notes. Like, it was like one of those like air flute things where it's so bad. Like, it's just painful to what, like when you're watching someone do that, you're like, oh my God,
so uncomfortable.
Someone give her the music.
Yeah.
she didn't. She's not ready. It was just so bad. And then the 2 kids in academy were so good that it really colored my experience. It was quite negative.
Aww.
Yeah. And then the next time, I'm sure I still had memory slips. The biggest memory slip that I remember, though, was when I obviously improved at my my Kiwanis playing, because I made it to the national finals and I won. And then I had to play in the final concert, which CBC decided to record. And on my program, I had the Ibert Concerto and the Burton Sonatina. And the adjudicator right away was like, play the Ibert. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I never want to play that thing again. Yeah. I'm always afraid that I'm going to forget it because it's like the most random notes. I'm going to play the Burton Sonatina because this is way outside of my, like, diarrhea. Let's talk about it. Like, there was plenty of sickness where I was there. And so I get to the final and I'm playing in this like huge Confederation Center for the Arts, and all you can see in these big stages, it's like Jubilee. Like, you can't see the audience the way they had the lights. You could only see like CBC's microphone and nothing else, because you were supposed to play by memory. And it was a competition amongst the winners of each discipline, which I decided like I had completely just removed myself. I'm like, I'm not here to compete. The violinist was playing Sibelius and I was playing Burton, so it's just not a competition.
Right.
Anyways, even if I had played Ibert, it's like, come on, you're playing a flute. It's a violin. It's not the same. But anyways, I was playing the Burton, and I remember in the third movement, I just had a complete memory slip of 2 bars. Just didn't play 2 bars. I just heard the accompaniment go by, and then it came back in. Didn't have any more memory slips. That's got to be like the most terrifying moment of my life. Not really, but up until that point.
Of your performance life,
perhaps? Oh my God,
yes.
Because, was I like 20? and I had almost made it through without screwing anything up, which was the only goal at that age.
Yeah, for sure.
To remember it, but that was a huge one.
Yeah.
I'm sure my mother's heart stopped.
Yeah. But you recovered.
But I don't know how or why.
Yeah.
But fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was big.
I was preparing for one of those like really big competitions where you have to do like 5 rounds of repertoire and have it all memorized, and just not very much experience memorizing anything. So I set up like a little recital for just like friends and family to sort of test my memory. And yeah, I literally just couldn't even get through one of the pieces. I think it was also Bach, and I stopped and started probably 4 times and just like looked at the music and tried again, and then looked at the music, and I was like, I just finally said, sorry everybody, I just can't finish this. And we just moved on to the next piece. I mean, at least it was mostly people just that I knew, but yeah, it's not exactly a professional level of performance.
You could have just played it with the music.
I could have, I guess, but I just gave up.
The friends
I think
and
I
family.
I was just defeated at that point. Yeah.
Next are some times that we've been requested to do some unusual or difficult things.
I had like 0 work. I had just graduated from school, 0 work, like the bottom of anybody's awareness. And so I think literally everyone was busy on a certain weekend, and Robert Aitken was coming to Calgary to play, and my husband at the time was a flute player also, and he was supposed to play this new music duet with Robert Aitken, and I begged him, like, let me do it. And he agreed because he didn't really want to learn it or whatever, and I started reading the music and started reading the fine print on the bottom, and it was like, play this on the foot joint, play this on the body, play this on the head joint upside down, like... It was crazy. And it took me months to learn how to play like shakuhachi style. Every piece of my flute I could play, because the flute was slowly like built over the course of the piece. So you'd leave pieces of your flute all around the stage and then play each piece and then slowly build it together. So I get to the first rehearsal with Robert Aitken, and he's like, oh, you can actually play this. We normally cancel this. No one can ever play this. I was like, why did you choose this then? It just took me months. I mean, so we went ahead and did it, but that was unexpected. Yeah.
My first experience with professional orchestra was with Vancouver Symphony playing the piccolo with Bramwell Tovey, rest in peace, conducting. And I don't think it was our very first concert, but it was like one of the first few. And I'm not a very confident piccolo player. And so it was like a kids show or an education show or something, and often they'll do sort of, demonstrations of the instruments for the kids who've never heard them before. And it just, without any, no one had warned me. I'd never done anything like this before. Bramwell Tovey like points to the flute sections and says, "What is the highest note on the piccolo? Let's hear it." And if you don't know piccolo, like, it's very hard to play just the highest note on the piccolo without being warmed up, without any lead up, especially if you're not a confident piccolo player. And I took a deep breath, and it just was like nothing came out. Nothing came out at all. I tried it like a few times, just like,
oh my God.
And I'm brand new. I don't even really have the job. I was just there on a very short-term basis, I'm just trying to like do my best, and I thought, oh gosh. So I mean, luckily we repeated that show, and like from henceforward I would play just like a lower note that sounded very high on the piccolo, that was easy to play, that I knew would come out, because that was very embarrassing. I did not find it funny at all at the time. I just found it like
I just want to just like give you a hug and be like, shh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the funniest things to orchestra musicians is when somebody plays in a rest. So somebody plays where they're not supposed to play, or takes a nice big breath and plays with a nice big sound. Is this something that you've ever witnessed or has happened to you?
I've witnessed it. I've never done it. I've never done it.
Never?
Ever. Not that I remember. I would remember.
Okay.
To me, that is like my worst nightmare. When things like, when the orchestra's playing like huge fortes and then 2 bars of complete silence, if I am not 100% sure what I'm doing, I just don't play.
Yeah.
Because I just cannot I would be so embarrassed. Like, I know it would be funny to everybody else,
But humiliating,
but
I know.
I would just be like so embarrassed. And with flute, it's not even like you could blame other people. Like,
I don't think in any
No.
instrument, it's usually pretty obvious.
no, yeah, it's true. You're right. You're right. It's pretty. I've never done it. I've seen it, and every time I'm like, so glad that wasn't me.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, for me, I think there's been times where I've like literally not played a solo because I was worried it was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then there's just a giant hole where nobody plays at all so I've done the reverse play in a...
That's neat.
And the conductor cues you like a few times very aggressively.
And you're like, I'm lost now.
Yeah.
3
Now I
cues
don't know
in,
what
and
to
yeah.
do.
Should I start at the beginning or
Yeah.
in the middle where we are now?
Next up are some orchestra pit fails.
I don't even remember what opera this was, but we were playing in the pit performance. And even in rehearsal, there was a section that I wasn't 100% sure what the conductor was doing, but like we got through it well enough that I was like, okay, I think I know what to do there. And then it comes time for the performance, and I don't know what I just misinterpreted whatever gesture the conductor made, and very confidently just came in completely wrong. Like I just like butchered the rhythm. The I think I went like double time or something. But the way I came in was like in a really leading, like confident way, and so it threw everybody else around me so off that it was like literally what you heard was like boop, boop, bip, 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 and then just nothing for like a whole bar because everybody got lost, the whole section.
I'm surprised
the
they
entire
didn't just
winds.
restart.
I think the conductor just saved it, and like I think a couple bars later, like the next section sort of starts, so like everybody just came in, went on, but it was just like beep bop boop, but nothing. Okay, back to the opera. I felt so bad. I went and like apologized to the conductor at the break, and he just joked. He's like pointed to his arm and was like, "Oh, I thought maybe my arm was malfunctioning or something."
Just my brain.
Yeah, no, it's just me. Oh, there was another opera where instead of like, so in opera, usually they like very clearly mark all the rests. So even if you're resting for 10 minutes, you know where you are in the music. But this opera, the composer just wrote tacit, which means you just don't play it for like an undetermined amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very long tacits. So like we would bring books. We don't do this anymore. But I got really like involved in the book that I was reading and sort of forgot where I was, and of course the tacit ended and I was still just reading my book. And then, I see this like frantic waving of arms somewhere in the distance, but it didn't register for way too long. That is because I completely missed my entry and just wasn't playing for started getting some elbows from the from around me. Like,
That's when they
"It's time
stopped
to
allowing
play."
books.
Yes, now we just aren't,
'Cause of
just
you.
have to sit there and wait. It's very unprofessional.
Well, thanks for listening to our first ever episode of Classic Mistake, The Saras, with myself and Sarah McDonald. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me in this crazy adventure, and we hope to have you all back for our next episode.